This is the Ballin' Out Podcast, your weekly breakdown of Red Raider basketball. From Double T 97.3 and Double T SportsNetwork.com.
Those aren't usable. Welcome into another episode of the Gaslighters. I am Rob Breaux, he's Clint Scott. If you're watching on YouTube, hammer that like button, smash that subscribe button, and we'll have a good old time today.
Click here for more videos just like this. If we both
It's over here.
If we,
No, I think
it's over here. No, I'm pretty sure it's down here. Is it?
Texas Tech beat Arizona State this week, 111 to 106.
Never a doubt.
I picked Arizona State to cover the large number, Clint,
As did I.
but I was fairly certain the game would hit the under at 144.5. That did not happen.
You know, I didn't look at what the over-under was. I looked at the huge, massive spread that opened up at 16.5 and dropped some movement before the game, all the way to 15.5, which was still a huge line in the Big 12, regardless of who you're playing. I mean, you just saw, if you want to see massive differences, I guess on the same day that you play Arizona and lose that game, Colorado hangs with Houston the whole time. If you're looking for stark differences.
Yeah.
And so that's what, like, when you look at a line like that, if you're a bettor, if I'm seeing 15 and up, that's one that I would put money down.
There's a lot of games in the Big 12
crazy.
that are 20 and 30 points.
Sure.
But then you have, Arizona State losing to Arizona by 1, and Kansas losing and then beating UCF by 40.
Yeah.
UCF beats Texas Tech and then loses to Kansas by 40.
And this Arizona State team, like, there are some blowouts in the Big 12, but I feel like we're seeing those get siphoned out by this point because Arizona State had been beaten by 15 or more points twice this year, and they both happened within their first 4 games of conference play. And now I think you are starting to see, one, why coaches were probably a tad bit worried when they saw just 2 games added to the Big 12 schedule where you were playing 18 and now you're playing 20. You're hearing like Kelvin Sampson, like, hey, what do you guys need? It's like, we need rest. We need our players to get healthy. And like all of this stuff. And it's like the Big 12 only got more difficult. But that's what makes this league so fun. But I think that's where you're seeing less and less blowouts in the conference. And so when I saw that massive line, I thought the same thing. I was like, Arizona State's going to cover that. I didn't look at the over-under. I would have been dead wrong had I. I thought that this was going to be an Arizona State cover, but you win by around 10 points. That's kind of how I felt about the game.
Did you have a player of the game there?
It's going to be hard to pick. You know what's funny? JT Toppin's double-double where he does something we haven't seen in 30 years at Tech, 41 points, 15 rebounds. Incredible shooting percentage. It overshadows just how good a lot of other guys were.
Darian Williams was great.
27 points. Christian Anderson made some of the biggest plays, like in a timely fashion in the game. Chance McMillan had a fairly quiet night until you needed him, and then he made huge plays. And so Elijah Hawkins, huge. Elijah Hawkins, extremely efficient, big plays.
Kerwin Walton microwaved for the first
goodness.
or 13 of the first 15 of the second half. And then to end the first overtime, he had the perimeter steal that might have been a bucket opportunity if he hadn't poked it away. Now, he had a breakaway, but time ran out. But that was maybe the biggest play of the game to that point.
Speaking of almost ending the game, I thought you were going to end the game with Anderson's steal, Walton layup attempt in transition that unfortunately got sent out of the stratosphere. But it goes to in a night where both offenses were clicking as much as possible, especially on the Arizona State side. It wasn't as much as possible. They were exceeding what they have done this year. And I have always been one, I don't like the fan side. When you lose a game or someone plays you close and you go, oh, of course this team just hits everything. Because usually I think that has more to do with your lack of defense. Were you perfect defensively? No, especially in the second half. I thought they drove on you quite a bit and found some room in the lane. But at the same time, Arizona State hit a ton of tough shots that I loved how you defended it, especially on one-on-one defense. And they, credit to them, they had guys that shot well above their shooting percentage. And it wasn't a guy, it was multiple guys.
I mean, that bank shot from the corner.
Stupid.
It's just like, okay. I mean, fine. Do you remember when Luka Doncic used to play for the Mavericks?
He played for the Mavericks? I thought he was always a Laker.
No, he used to play for the Mavericks.
Oh.
What
happened there?
Well, they went to the finals, and then they said he would never get back, I guess. So they traded him.
Oh, they traded him?
So there was a play last year where he dives in transition, flips it behind his head to Kyrie. Kyrie bounced a couple times, throws it up to Gafford over a defender. I thought Kerwin Walton was going to throw it. Just in my mind, I was like, oh, Toppin's crashing.
Yeah.
That would have been epic, but didn't quite happen that way.
Sorry, I'm distracted by an off-brand Tony Romo and Mike Gustafson calling the start of the Texas Tech North Carolina baseball game from.
That is Walmart brand Mike Gustafson right there.
Yeah. That would have been incredible, but also as you bring up that play, I think if there are Mavs fans watching this podcast, thank you. We'll get off the subject, but they just were playing a sad piano just came in as they remember that play.
Yeah. That guy looks like if Gus was playing him in a movie.
And the makeup guy was bad.
Yeah.
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 Look, I think you can say a lot of things about this double overtime win. You can say a lot of negatives in there too. More positives than negatives, thankfully, because it was an incredibly fun game. If you were just a participant that had no stake in the game, wasn't an Arizona State fan, wasn't a Texas Tech fan, it was one of the best games we've seen in the Big 12 this year. And that was on the same night that Oklahoma State, your next opponent, had their heart ripped out by TCU, trailing the whole game. You get your first lead with 18 seconds left. You have a 72-70 lead with 3 seconds in the game. Full court pass. It's tipped up in the air right to a guy who hasn't basically hit a shot all night and hits a 3 dead on. That game was incredible. You topped that one. Wednesday night was crazy. You're in contention for like the Houston game in double overtime where they beat Kansas and scored 8 points in like 3 seconds, what it felt like. Like though you're in a very shallow circle of the best games in the Big 12 this year. Now it was only fun because you were on the right end, but I look at like the close games you lost earlier in the season, and you have taken massive, massive strides. I know I'm not really breaking any news here. It's just good to see because I don't think the team that lost to St. Joe's wins this game. They might not even make it to the first overtime.
I agree. And I think in the other way, this team playing today would have hammered St. Joe's.
Yeah, what do you think that line would be?
Oh, if you played them tomorrow, it'd be probably similar to the Arizona State line. I mean, or more, 15, 20. I mean, if you're playing them neutral side, I guess it's probably closer to 10. But what do you think the Oklahoma State line will be? Because it's not out yet.
It's at Oklahoma State. That last time you played them in Lubbock, that game was horrendous in the second half. And you won it, but it was ugly. I'm going to go Red Raiders 5.5? 6.5?
I said 6.5 earlier.
Yeah.
So looking at Oklahoma State and TCU as we kind of move through the week, I don't really want to bog down in specifics of these two games because you've already played them twice.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already played each one of them. And we could go specific matchups, but I think we did a good job of that last time. I don't think anything's changed.
Mm-hmm. Never repeat your work.
But what do you want to see? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? I had a joke there, but what do you want to see just through this week? Besides 2 wins, because I think that's the obvious, but what do you want to see from these 2 games? Do you want to get back the defensive intensity? Do you want to continue the offense? Like if you scored 100 points in 3 straight games, I don't think that's much of an issue. I have one thing that I want to see, but I want to hear what you want to see first.
So mine isn't a team-related thing. Mine goes down to individuals. And it was what I had said, what I wanted to see in the Arizona State game. I wanted to see either a productive performance from Kevin Overton, who's still trying to work back from his concussion issue, and is now like getting like 7-8 minutes and have been fairly quiet since he's been back. And again, you understand. Or it was Kerwin Walton having a productive night, and he was maybe the hottest basketball player in a 5-minute period all year with that second half start, and was really, really good. So I'm going to wash, rinse, never repeat your work, wash, rinse, repeat, because I want to see either Kerwin Walton continue to show that he can, because he's been on, he's been off, he's been on, he's been off. I either want to see Kerwin Walton continue that, or I want to see Kevin Overton get, right. And I understand that's might take a little bit. Injuries can certainly cause hitches in a player's play and production, but I want to see either of those two things. That's the individual thing. If I went to a team goal, I'm going to start with Oklahoma State just because that game was so, like I said, just had very ugly moments against the Pokes. I want to see you play a clean game. And JT Toppin doesn't need to have 41 points, but he had 8 points, I believe, in that win there here in Lubbock. Foul trouble. I'm sure he wants a better performance. And I want to see you honestly you win there last year. You're 6-22 all time in Stillwater. And there are still some ghosts that I think fans think of when you think of the Pokes. No matter the stark difference in teams like there is this year, I would like to see you put that thought process to rest. Exorcise the demons, if you will.
I have two very similar points, but I'm going to make them differently. My individual thing is I want Kerwin Walton and Kevin Overton. No, I want those guys to be able to play more. I want them to be playing well and on the floor, but not necessarily because I want those guys to be involved. I want to see a game or a stretch where Chance can get some rest, where Elijah Hawkins can get some rest. I know Christian Anderson's also played a lot, but he didn't play much, early in the season, so maybe you can get him some heavy minute games here in the middle of the season. Darian Williams, there's not really a replacement, but another one is Federico. He has to be better than he's been this last week.
He had a bad week.
He had a good stretch, and then he had a bad stretch. He needs to get back to that good stretch because you need Toppin certainly to have 40-point games every once in a while in the regular season, but you need him down the stretch. You need him against Kansas and Houston. You need him in the Big 12 tournament potentially for a game or two, and you have to have him in March Madness being healthy. So if Federico can play 20 minutes of good basketball, and I'm not saying even when you're stretched out, I'm saying good, tight Big 12 basketball, if Federico could be a difference maker in there, and Walton and Overton are scoring, so Chance McMillan doesn't have to play, 39, 40-plus minutes against Arizona State? I think he played
49 minutes.
Yeah, 49 minutes. Yeah, he missed 1 minute of basketball.
Yeah.
And that's just not sustainable. As you opened kind of this segment of, Kelvin Sampson saying we need rest, there's no off day.
Yeah.
So if you're playing 50 minutes of basketball every third or fourth game, right, going to overtime, and you're on the floor the entire game, like Overton has to step up. Now, he was injured, not his fault, but he has to be a player, or Walton, and Walton played good and had 25 minutes in that overtime game. So those guys can't be having repeats of Arizona where they play 6 minutes and they just don't trust them on the floor.
Never repeat your work. I think when you're looking down the tournament line, like what you just mentioned, that's important now. Also to get those guys rolling, because like if you are going to make a deep tournament run, you would figure, you're going to have consistent play from the guys you expect, but it just always works out that you have other guys step up. And you've seen that this year. You saw that against Arizona State, like I said, with Kerwin Walton and with Christian Anderson, and Kevin Overton can be that guy, and Federico can be that guy. But somebody else other than your main cast of characters, if you're going to make it, deeper than just past the first round or even out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. It probably wouldn't hurt to have a pretty decent run in the Big 12 tournament as well. Right now, you're hanging around still the 3 to 4 seed line. There's nothing saying that you can't jump up to the 2 seed line. You have ample opportunity. But also, I look at this stretch you're about to go into with Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and really this last game against Arizona State started it because it's a 4-game stretch that's going to end with West Virginia before you face Houston at home, and then it's a quick turnaround big Monday in Lawrence as you face the Jayhawks. And the Jayhawks have been up and down, but it's still Lawrence. And just like, hey, you beat Houston on the road, it's still Houston. Those games are going to be really tough. You are still in contention to get a share or win the Big 12. If you can get a little bit right as far as the health department and rest department over these next 3 games, and I'm not saying they're going to be cakewalks before people jump down our throats. Arizona State, obviously, was just not a cakewalk. But if you can turn that into where you're not having to have just overly stressful, just tear you down physically type of games, that's going to help you in those 2 games. It's also going to help you if you can get into that sort of level of play where so you're playing at the right time, playing your best basketball at the right time before you get into the Big 12 tournament and before you get into the NCAA tournament. I think that's important to do that right now over these next 3 games.
When the Gaslighters reconvene after the TCU game, the rest of the Big 12 schedule is intense over the next couple of games as well. It always is, but namely Arizona and Houston playing this weekend. Mm-hmm. Do you expect to be, firmly number 2 with Arizona taking another loss, or do you expect to be numero uno with Houston taking a loss?
Arizona has not lost at home. In fact, Arizona's really, really good at home. And I think matchup-wise, you look at what Arizona, even though, look, they just lost by 3 points to Kansas State, who is right now the best team in the Big 12 with how they're playing. There's a very interesting matchup at BYU on Saturday, by the way. I think Arizona is going to beat Houston. And I look at, the guards can't shoot as poorly as they did in Manhattan. Kansas State shot 5% from the outside and still won that game. But for Arizona, they're not a terrific outside shooting team, but they're a good outside shooting team. They shot 9%. They were 2 of 22. One of them shouldn't count because it's the last second full court heave from Caleb Love. I don't expect that to happen back at their home place. But the biggest thing for Arizona, and we were on the wrong end of that, we saw that, is their bigs are playing lights out right now. I mean, they are piecing together a type of team that we kind of expected to see from Arizona. A not just Big 12 title contending team, but a Final Four type of play, which, by the way, I'm very curious. I would put money down, to go back to betting, a Big 12 team is going to be in the Final Four this year. I just don't know who it's going to be. It could be you. It could be Iowa State, who we're not talking about. It could be you, Rob Bro. We know it's that one kid who hit the layup free throw 3-pointer half court at Arizona State. Congratulations to you. If you're
Have we confirmed?
Shout out.
Have we confirmed that he did step over the line?
Oh man, was that UMass?
Man, yeah.
What was that? But I think Arizona's going to win this game, and you're going to be looking at 12-2 Big 12 teams there at the top. And by the way, if you want to talk about tough stretches, the top 4 teams right now between you, those 2, and Iowa State and Houston and Arizona, they all play each other a lot. And that's not to mention all of those teams. Of course, you play Houston and Kansas. They also play Kansas. They also play Baylor, who I kind of think is hey, they're in contention. They could still win the Big 12 title. I don't think they're going to. They're not consistent enough, but they're good enough to knock off one of those
we're
teams.
big VJ Edgecombe fans over the next 2.5, 3 weeks.
So that's going to be the next 7 games of Big 12 play. Because I've heard it's not likely that you're going to do enough where you're at to win the Big 12. You could have some help, and you could end with a 15-5 record and still have a share of the Big 12 championship.
Yep. Agreed. All right, any final thoughts here, Clint, as we wrap up?
We didn't hit it over the head because you've seen it from every outlet, but it really is like the JT Toppin performance we just saw. When we look back and we're having the like on this day sort of talk. I mean, that one, he was such a great get, obviously in the portal, but I don't think we ever imagined the type of production we've seen out of him and how consistently he's done it, and then just like the superstar type of play on top of it, where I mean. In a game against Arizona State, I would have never guessed you would have any player etch his name in Texas Tech.
Right.
Like Darian Williams did it against Kansas last year, on the same day, by the way. Speaking of on this day, perfect performance, 12 of 12, 30 points. That one will be remembered forever. You just had one with JT Toppin that was wild, and you put into it that it was a double overtime game, which ups the ante there. But he has just been... I think somehow exceeded expectations for when you added him to the roster.
You know, it's funny you say that just because it's against Arizona State, you don't expect it. When I think of all-time moments, it's, Darryl Dora against Kansas, that Darian Williams game against Kansas. It's Keenan Evans against Texas in overtime. It's Mike Singletary against A&M at the Big 12 tournament.
Mm-hmm.
It really does feel like a bunch of
McClung
against Texas.
In Austin.
Yeah.
And this one's and there was Arizona State.
Yeah.
Like one of these things isn't like
funny.
the other.
It's funny. And maybe because you just don't remember those random big performances in games that I'm not going to say don't matter, but aren't like rivals, but.
Well, they're not like the heavy hitters that, like, when you look on the schedule at the start of the season, you're not circling Arizona State as like, man, that one's going to be tough, or that's the one I'm the most pumped about. Because even like TCU, who is not in that category as far as, program, they are in games that mean something to Texas Tech. Like Baylor is something that means something to Texas Tech. It just doesn't have that level of weight. It's an important game because it's a Big 12 game. But it's just nowhere near that stratosphere.
All right, this was another episode of the Gaslighters with Rob Breaux, Clint Scott, and Choice Woodman.
What if he just popped up right there?
Well, I don't. Be sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button, as we said earlier.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Watch the other videos. Happy Valentine's Day.
Treat that special someone in your life to the Gaslighters episode.
This is the Ballin' Out Podcast, your weekly breakdown of Red Raider basketball from Double T 97.3 and Double D Sports Network.com.